Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are talking about the latest state of the game. Yes, I've seen it now, and some part of me regrets sitting there watching it. I'm not bashing the entire update. There's a lot of cool changes coming. However, as always, I have my own opinion on them, and I will be expressing those opinions in this video. So I want to start by talking about the fact that they were all getting super excited about PowerPoint presentations. And I don't understand why they get excited about this stuff. They were more excited about the PowerPoint presentation than what they was about the upcoming changes. But we're going to jump into priority alerts. I'm going to try and make this as fast as possible. I would like to, however, point out and just quickly put in the video, this is the sort of stuff we had to listen to, and this is why sometimes it's so hard to put up with this state of the game, because they never really make sense. Like, they have written notes and stuff in front of them, and they still make things this confusing. Just have a little listen to this.
You could have changed the difficulty and the directives you have. You could be playing with a slightly different group of friends, as long as it's still the, the same group of people being the party leader.
So that was Mackenzie talking about you have your own, your own progression, basically. So if you're the group leader, you're on floor 34 and you want to invite different friends in, then you do that. And it will keep the same floor and progress because of your progression. That's all he had to say. Instead of all these groups and this and groups and that and and just carrying on. It didn't make sense. It was so hard to make out what he meant. But priority alerts, just quickly. We had the typical Tuesday maintenance, and it started the broken apparel event, which has been semi-fixed because the missing keys are coming next week. They managed to fix the one of the issues that was stopping keys being rewarded, and they're not actually giving the missing keys out until Tuesday. But I guarantee that some of you won't actually get your keys properly, so that when the event goes into its final week, they are there ready with their wallets open for you to make purchases because of your missing keys. There are hundreds of players that have been experiencing wet dreams over the outfits in this event. The outfits don't look too great. I don't know why players are getting so excited. They fixed the bug with Hunter's Fury. I didn't even understand this fully, but it was apparently allowing stacks to do something when you unequip and then re-equip different pieces. I think they mentioned something with, was it Apex Predator or something like that? It wasn't working properly. And Unwavering, one of the weapon talents, they've updated that description because, the whole slogan of the company is updating weapon talent description since 1997, Massive Entertainment TM. Another issue, allowing players to go rogue without being marked or something like that. That's the priority alerts. We're moving on. They are aiming for October 20th with TU11.1, but they haven't specified if that's the exact date. They said they will keep us up to date, but then with last week's state of the game where they didn't even bother telling us whether it was on or not, absolutely no talk of it this week or anything. We don't know if the 20th is going to be the release date. If not, it'll be the 27th because it all falls on Tuesdays. There are no more rally points in the summit in TU11.1. And I'm going to say this now, I'll probably talk over it again in a little moment, in a little while when we get to that part, I'll probably talk about it again. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you are still looking for the legendary exotic component from the summit for the Ridgeway's Pride chest, get your ass on the game and go get it now. Because when this update comes out, you're going to have to grind and grind and grind to get hold of that piece, because it's going to work completely differently. I'll explain it a little bit further into the video. They put up an image on screen. I'm not going to put the images up, I'll just refer back to them. They show that you start on floor 34. Heroic difficulty, 2 active directives, awarding 50% bonus XP, and you get a 2 times chance of getting suggested, targeted loot. It's targeted, it's not suggested. As it currently works in the game, I would call it suggested loot, but it might feel a little bit more targeted when this update comes out. As I said, they are making good changes. Although I do personally believe that they're far too late with this stuff. This should have been available as soon as the summit dropped. They worked on this mode for months and now they can come up with all these cool things within the matter of 2 weeks. Legendary will have the highest chance of dropping targeted loot, and your difficulty and directives will have an effect because the higher difficulty and the more directives, you actually have a better chance. It goes up to 9 times chance bonus or whatever of getting targeted loot. The change for that will apply to the entire game, not just the summit. This bit really confused me, however, because each of the directives is worth 25% bonus XP. Although they showed on screen 9 directives applied, and the XP bonus is 175%. Meaning, instead of the original 25% per directive, they've gone with 19.44%, or the roughly 19.44% bonus XP each one. Because if you have 9 directives, they're 25% XP each one, that's 225 for 9, but they've gone with 175, meaning once you have all 9 applied and you're playing with 9 directives, your bonus XP per directive has dropped. Then we got to see the world's worst ever example that was never even needed. We got to see an example of how players would play the summit. On Tuesday, you might play floors 1 to 36, legendary, no directives, 4-player co-op. Friday, you might play floors to 34 to 80 because the soft checkpoints, every 3 floors in this game mode you get a checkpoint. They will be staying in the game. So if you get to 36 on Tuesday, 3 days later, I don't know why you're skipping 3 days, but 3 days later you come back on, you're starting at 34 because that's when the checkpoint would have been. So those final 2 floors you did, 35 and 36, they were pointless on Tuesday because Friday you're back down to 34. But Friday, 34 to 80, heroic, 3 directives, 3-player co-op. Saturday, floors 80 to 99, because Friday was 34 to 80. Saturday, 80 to 99, legendary, no directives, 2-player co-op. Sunday, 97, because obviously 99 is not a checkpoint, neither is 98. So you're back down to 97, but you go all the way to 100. You decide to do that heroic, 0 directives, solo. Also Sunday, you go back through, you do floors 1 to 22, hard with 6 directives, solo. All of that example explanation was fucking pointless. They simply could have just said, you are free to select whichever difficulty, directives and stuff that you want, but it's floors 1 to 100 now. You can't go and pick floors, there are no rally points. It would have been that simple for an explanation, but no, they decided a full-on image, explaining all this different stuff and making an example of how you would play it. Just tell players they have freedom and choice now. It would have been so much simpler. There's a new thing called threat scaling. It means there's more lieutenant squads and elites and stuff, and more bosses the higher you go, because they think more of the same enemies increases difficulty in this game. If you've played the game, I'm pretty sure you will understand, it just makes the mission or mode more time consuming. It doesn't actually change the difficulty by spawning more enemies. They are forcing a level 1 restart for absolutely everyone, but there's not going to be a weekly reset as a couple of people might have thought there would have been. So literally when this drops, if it comes out October the 20th, we'll stick to that because that's the date they said. So October the 20th, when you log in, you are forced back to level 1. You can't go back in any other level. Everyone has to start back at level 1 again. You can finally select your targeted loot. And they've separated the gear sets, but they've only done it for Summit. And you can change these whenever you want to. So if you want to go in there and you want to run for Providence, you can select Providence. And if you want to run in there and go for, I don't know, Hunter's Fury, you can select Hunter's Fury as your targeted loot. That is pretty cool. One thing they've done as well is something that I've pointed out several times. I've not heard another content creator talk about this. So I'm going to say that I think the developers do occasionally listen to what I have to say. I don't know how many of you guys from the community might have mentioned it, but I have definitely in videos spoken about it, and I've never heard another content creator do it. So I'm going to take a little bit of the credit for this. With the targeted loot selection, you can't select outside of the summit, but individual gear sets will be added to the normal rotation. So, one day, if you're playing DARPA Research Labs, you might have True Patriot, you might have Negotiator's Dilemma. They finally split the gear sets up, so you're not just farming for gear sets. I don't know if they're going to be spread out so that every gear set is available every day, or if they're just going to do like gear sets here and then there'll be the separate gear sets. So say American History Museum has just all gear sets, Lincoln Memorial might have True Patriot. I don't know if they've done it like that. I'm hoping and praying they've added it to the normal rotation. So for an example, if Providence is on Lincoln Memorial one day, which is very rare, but if it is, then you could have True Patriot as well. I definitely don't think it's going to work like that because that will mean a lot of loot is dropping. But we'll have to wait and see exactly how that's going to work. But I think it's a really, really good change finally splitting up the gear sets. It means people can go for specific gear sets that they want to instead of having to rely on RNG and hope that the gear set they're going for is going to drop. Another thing, this is a fantastic change, and I'm not being sarcastic with that. I really think this is a fucking good idea. I'm glad they've done this. When you are in the summit, and alongside that, before I mention this topic, whatever, like this point, I want to say, they had the vision for this mode to be classed as replayable content. In its current state, how they initially released it, it was not classed as replayable content. Whether Yannick's going to put out a 10-thread post explaining what replayable means within the company, the changes they are making right now that are going to be applied to the game on the 20th of October or whenever it's ready, that is replayable content. The summit targeted loot is personal. You can each select your own targeted loot in this mode. If I'm running with Con, Pete and Lewis, if I want to go for Providence, Lewis wants to go for Hannah Yu, Con wants to go for Hunter's Fury, and Pete wants to go for, let's just say, Richter and Kaiser. We can all go for whatever loot we want to go for. We don't all have to be going for the same targeted loot. That is probably one of the best changes we are going to see. I'm actually loving the idea of, like, on October the 20th, being able to go through whatever difficulty I want, whatever amount of directives I want to do. I can go through and I can farm the summit on any floors for exactly what I want. That is fucking incredible. The fact that they finally have taken some sort of information from the community in a good way, not the snowflakes that whinge about everything, but they've taken some good community feedback on board. They've made changes. I can't wait until this comes out. I'm going to be playing Summit very often, going for the builds that I want, going for the loot that I want, because I can specify it more to what I want to do. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff isn't making the open world and missions and stuff, but it's going to add to the replayability of the Summit game mode. People are going to be in there a lot of the time because they can specify what they're going for. I love a lot of these changes. There are a couple of things that are silly, and a lot of the stuff, if not all of it, should have been in from the get-go, but I'm glad we're not having to wait several months for this to happen. The Summit's only been out, by the time they release it, it's been out for around about a month, so it is pretty good. One thing that I see a little bit pointless, weekly exotic caches and named items, and there's a couple of other things in there, like specialization points and blueprints if you don't have them. They are going to be available if you complete the summit once a week. You get all of those rewards, so you can get an exotic cache weekly from playing the summit game mode if you can make it to 100. The windows on the floor 100 door were apparently exploited, so they've now made it a solid door. I don't think it's classed as an exploit because the enemies can hit you too. It's a cover-based looter shooter, and that door was just being used as extra cover. There are, however, a lot of walls in this mode that can't be used for cover, so they need to rethink their strategy of what they are doing, because they need to fix the walls that you can't cover on, because they're big enough walls to take cover on. It just doesn't work, and I think they need to revert that change and bring the windows back and let players play floor 100 how they want to. It's not an exploit because you're not shooting through walls and bending bullets over fucking ceilings and stuff. You're not creating holes in the floor and sending like seeker mines down underground and popping up and shit. You're literally just shooting through glass. The enemies can still hit you, so you're just using the doors as extra cover. I don't see a problem with that at all. If there was something happening a little bit more dodgy and people were somehow managing to not get hit at all whilst they're absolutely ploughing the enemies, fair enough, but I don't think that was the case. I think people were literally just keeping the doors shut and taking out floor 100 like that. So I wouldn't class that as an exploit at all. Next up is Ridgeway's Pride. It got a 5 meter buff for both parts of the talent, and percentages of armor regen were increased. I still don't think it's going to be good enough. 20 meters would have been the better option for applying bleed, or at least test 20. And then the regen distance should not exist. Once an enemy's bleeding, you should be able to be anywhere you want within that mission and still get your armor back. And also the percentages need reworking, because you're never really consistently going to have 5 enemies close enough to you, especially on a 15 meter radius. And then if we talk about this, there was another image of a couple of bullet points on there. So for gameplay, these are additional improvements. There's going to be more objectives. There's going to be quicker laptop interact animations. The holding the shade crates is more beneficial, and there's going to be new UI notifications about exotic fire teams, bosses, etc. So the more objectives, I'm welcome to seeing more objectives in the game. I'm open to it. Seems like a cool addition. Quicker laptop interact animation. Pointless. What they need to do with the objectives in the game mode where you have to interact with laptops, what they need to do is either 1, only have the enemies spawn when the laptop interaction is at 50%. That way, you have a chance to start off the interaction with it, then the enemies are spawned, because they spawn at the doors that are right near the objective a lot of the time. Depending on the room and depending on the area you're in, they will spawn literally right next to you. Either that, or they need to stop the enemies spawning at those doors so that you can start off the interaction, the percentage can start increasing, and then the enemies are having to run towards you from the doors that are further away. And that's what they should have done. I don't think interacting with the laptop faster is going to make a difference, because you're still under fire from enemies that are spawning literally inside you. Legendary difficulty, the Chunguses with their bleed hives, they're going to mess you up. Holding the shade crates being more beneficial, basically we're getting a buff to the skills and everything that come out of them. They're going to basically puke up the skills faster, and there's going to be better skills being deployed. There's no changes for the enemies, that's just player changes. And we're now going to get notified about exotic fire teams, which are the guys with the flamethrowers and the riot foam and stuff when you're playing Legendary. We'll now be notified when we're fighting an exotic fire team, basically. Ridgeway's Pride, they said the Bleeding Edge talent was buffed. The parts are now going to drop, and this is the part I said earlier, listen to later on in the video. The parts are now going to drop based on your floor number, and there's going to be an increased drop chance. So they have increased the drop chance, you've got a better chance of getting the parts, but because they're based on your floor number, the original exotic component that was for normal difficulty, floors 1 to 20, 21 to 40 will be for hard, so on and so forth. But because you are reset to floor 1 every single time you complete 100, if you're going for that legendary exotic component, you have to make it up to floors 81 to 100. If you go through, if RNG is that bad for you, you go through 81 to 100 without getting that exotic component, then you need to go all the way back through the mode, get back to 81 to 100, just to get that to drop. If you are lucky, you could have to do it several times. So if you need that legendary exotic component, or pretty much any of them, try and get the components out of the way before this comes in, because having to farm 80 floors just to have a chance of getting the legendary one, to begin your chances, that is going to take the piss. So I'll try and get those components knocked out before this drops, because I think they might have to change that. I don't think that's acceptable, especially because they're forcing you back to floor 1. They should have done it so that the drops doesn't, the floor number doesn't matter. You've just got the same chance for any of the components that you don't have on any of the floors. And the increased drop chance, some players are saying they haven't received the components. They've done lots and lots of runs. RNG is going to come into it. You might be doing something wrong if you're not getting them, because the game mode's been out for 2 weeks. If you haven't got them components now, then you're doing something wrong, or it's broken for you. Not necessarily that you're not doing it right, but every 3 floors you can find a summit access key. Grab that key, open the big crate that will be in a room on the same floor as the elevator to go up again, or progress to the next floor. So every 3 floors, when you get that soft checkpoint, that little elevator, there will be a box on that floor you have to open, and you can get the exotic components to drop out of that. The next thing, this has really pissed me off. The quest now, the second part of the project, only requires that you neutralize 2 hunters and rogues. That was originally 3. They have said that they've done this to balance it so that it's fair for solo players. Because for those of you that don't know, the hunters and the rogues, the hunters in the summit, will always spawn 1 more than your group size. So if there's 4 of you, you get 5. If there's 1 of you, you get 2. That's the reason they've done it. So great for solo players. Absolutely fantastic. But they fucked you over within the first month of this mode. Whereas on the other hand, for those of us that have gone through and done this project, we've now been fucked over because we had to do 3. All it was for solo players is just do 2 runs, or just matchmake for that part. I know for some people it's not easy, and solo is your much preferred playstyle. You don't like playing with other players, but all you had to do was experience the rogues twice. That's literally all you had to do. If you've taken down the hunters in the summit, either go back through floor 100 and do that again, or just go and take down 2 hunters from doing floor 100s once, and then go do one of the open world hunters from the keys and the masks and stuff. There were a lot of ways around it. But I'm glad for the solo players, because they now have a chance to do it in 1 run instead of 2. But at the same time, the solo players were fucked over within the first month, and now those of us that have already done it, we've been fucked over now, because when this update does apply, we've had to do 3, now everyone else has to do 2. So they've really messed up with that. They should have put more thought into it in the first place and started the whole thing with 2. I don't know why they never took solo players into consideration. That happens a lot with this game if you're unaware. They always shit on the solo players. Next up, and this is coming towards the end of the video, there are some fixes, and this is the only ones they've announced. They were supposed to be working on like difficulty balancing changes, so sorting out the enemy's aggression and stuff yet again, but I don't know if that's going to happen. They never mentioned it. But the fixes they've noted are that the loot crates reset if they're encountered again, so they've still kept it all copy-paste, but the loot crates will reset. You can now select matchmake without reloading, so apparently it would reload you into the game or something. You can do that properly now. The mega map inside the summit now has the correct tabs, so right now in the game you can't check your projects and stuff within the summit. You can do that when this update comes out. There's various UI and map fixes. I'm hoping those map fixes include fixing the objectives, because a lot of them are broken. I don't know how often it's supposed to happen, if it's supposed to happen at all, but yesterday during my live stream, we encountered 2 shade crates on the exact same floor, and I don't mean doing one objective with a shade crate, moving on to the next area, having another shade crate objective. Within the same objective, same room, we had 2 separate shade crates. I don't know if that's supposed to happen, don't know how rare it is or whatever, but that's something we've experienced for the first time, and we've played the summit quite a lot since its release. Next up, they've improved the loot from the final 100th floor enemy, so the hunters. They have improved the loot on the hunters, but they couldn't do that whilst players were farming floors 91 to 100. They've now improved that loot when you have to go through the entire mode. So now you have to go floor 1 to 100, then once you've done 100, back to floor 1. Now they've got that in the game, they've improved the loot from the hunters. And then it says for the final fix, White Tusk are taught how to hold guns properly. They've seen video footage of the White Tusk running around with their arms up in the air. It's not the White Tusk, it's any enemy faction. It's the lieutenants on each of the 10th floors, or if you get the random objective. The lieutenants were the ones that were holding their arms up in the air and shooting the gun just from their chest. It was attached to their chest. That's how they were shooting their guns. That's all enemies. There were people in the chat that were saying, what do you mean White Tusk? Don't you mean the Black Tusk? No, the developers meant the White Tusk. Legendary enemies are known as the White Tusk. They're pretty much the remains of the LMB. The Black Tusk recruited them all, gave them their own little faction. And I'm not going to go any more into that explanation. If you don't know about the White Tusk, then go and check up the lore. Go and have a look at the lore of the game. Find out why they're known as the White Tusk. Officially, I think they are called Black Tusk, but everyone in the community that has played the game and knows about Legendary, should I say, they know the enemies as the White Tusk. And then finally, the very final point, they have fixed a firewall conflict bug in 11.1. So on the 20th, whatever problem there was in conflict with the firewall, that's been fixed. So a lot longer than I wanted it, but I had to go through and explain it so that you guys understand, because they do such a poor job every single week. I really hope that this is the beginning of like a good thing for the game, because I'm very excited to play the Summit, being able to personalize it to how I want to experience it. I'm going to be playing Legendary pretty much all of the time. I'm going to dip in and out of different directives and see which ones suit me. I don't understand cool skills and scavenged skills working together. One of them, you pop a skill out, the other one goes on cooldown, but then that's cool skills. But then scavenged skills, whenever you use a skill, you have to go and pick up parts to force it to cool down. So they're basically, one of them's going to be obsolete, whichever one's going to overpass the other, or bypass the other, because if cool skills is going to be the top dog out of the two, then you're not going to have to ever pick up parts, so scavenged skills isn't going to work. Whereas if scavenged skills is going to be the thing, then every single time you use a skill, the other one's going on cooldown, but it's not a cooldown time based, you have to go and pick up parts. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but the Fixer Drone and the Revive Hive combo, if you're running, like, cool skills is annoying, but if you're running scavenged skills, it's going to be a fucking nightmare. Because as soon as you pop out your Fixer Drone and that Revive Hive goes on cooldown, you've got to go and pick up 33 parts, and you're the only player out of an entire group that can get those parts to drop. They don't drop if your friends get the kills. 33 parts to get that thing back off cooldown. But I will be playing mostly Legendary. I'll try all the different directives and see the XP and the loot chances. Like, we'll do a little bit of like testing and stuff when it all comes out. But on that note, we're going to leave the video there. Let me know your thoughts and stuff in the comments. Are you looking forward to this? Are you not? Are you not too fast? Are you still really against the summit? Let me know all of that cool stuff down below. I will see you in the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.